Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, we are back with another episode. Excited to get into this one. It's not very newsy right now. It's kind of the calm before the storm. Next week, we're going to have a big signing day recap podcast. Finally, all the coaches will hopefully be back in town and done with recruiting. I'm seeing tweet after tweet. They're literally just canvassing the United States.
Seeing coaches in Salt Lake as well when you ran into Hinson.
Yes,
in person.
Yes. So I can verify that they are definitely out there. But we'll have a big signing day pod. But we got to talk about some of the Trojans or almost Trojans.
Future Trojans, yeah.
They're in some bowls that will showcase their talents. There is one, I believe, that's in a couple hours of recording this, so it's already going to be over by the time we get this out, unfortunately. But we're going to preview those and talk about what that process is like. This is where I love these episodes, Cody, because I love picking your brain about what this experience is like, because I don't really know what happens once your final game ends. And then, because to me, it's like final game, combine, draft, you're good. But obviously, I know that there's a ton of work and things behind the scenes that goes on.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this episode. Next week's going to be a lot of fun, obviously, with more USC football news, the here and now. But I'm excited to talk about these players that spent so much time here at USC, and even some of these one-year guys that are going on to represent us in the NFL. And yeah, it's a crazy process. I'm excited to get into it. But yeah, it's as soon as that last game ends, it is hiring an agent, getting ready for the draft, getting ready for the Senior Bowl, the East-West Shrine Bowl, all these things coming up, the Combine, like you mentioned. Then you have Pro Day. It is a never-ending process until April when draft comes around. But I'm happy to talk about these guys and kind of give them their flowers and send them on their way, if you will, and look forward to watching them on Sundays.
You know what's another perk of next week that I just realized when you were talking about it? We finally get to talk about players that are signed that we've gotten questions about, but we haven't been able to talk about because we can't talk about anyone until they've officially signed with USC, or else it's a violation because we're affiliated with the school. So we'll be finally freed, Cody. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, and we're going to have a cool little film breakdown as well, so stay tuned for that. Keely had an amazing idea, and she sent me this app to where I can actually break down film, and she can input it into the podcast so you can see what I'm drawing on or writing on, kind of like the Trojan Tailgate where we do, or any of the, I guess, the analytical shows where you do the breakdowns with the film study. But we'll be able to get a little bit more in depth with that, and I'm excited. There's a lot of really good players in this transfer window, which kind of not off topic, but I was reading about the transfer portal a little bit, trying to learn more. There's so many windows and different opportunities, so stay tuned for all that throughout the offseason. But yeah, I'm excited for this episode, getting to talk about some Trojans that really made their mark on USC football, and looking forward to them competing over these next couple of months, getting ready for the NFL.
Alrighty, before we jump into it, just a couple of reminders. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to go above and beyond, you can leave a review on your podcasting app. It helps the show grow, and we greatly appreciate everyone who's done it so far. Also, if you ever want to get your voice heard, we love questions, especially off-season questions, Cody. You can go to any of our socials. Victory Pod USC. We either put out a tweet or a question box the day before we record. And like I said, we love hearing from you guys. You help fuel some of the more interesting topics that we talk about in this offseason.
Yeah, or topics we've never even thought of.
Yeah, true.
And I end up going on like a 5-minute rant about a question. But yeah, that's my favorite part. And that was kind of the point of this episode as well, is yes, talk about some of these guys going to the NFL, but also just do a question episode. We said we wanted to be more consistent.
Get in a rhythm.
And there's not a ton of news, we're sorry, with USC football that we can talk about yet. Again, next week's going to be a lot of fun. That episode's going to be really cool. So make sure you subscribe or like. Can you do that on
all of it?
On all of it, whatever you said.
We're on YouTube.
Yeah.
We're simulcasting.
Yeah, we do
but
video,
if you're listening,
audio,
whatever. Thank you to everyone.
But stay tuned. These episodes, there's going to be a lot more news coming up. We're excited. But again, we're here. We're doing another episode. No one's sick this week. We're not putting it off. We're not waiting. I know.
Fingers crossed. Hey, I am taking vitamins.
There you go. I will say though, it's raining right now. And,
I know.
And it is
Gotta
the
take
next
extra
couple.
vitamins.
Yeah, the next couple of days. I had an umbrella today too. I know we told that story.
Which you were weirdly like.
There's something about. Yeah, there's something about.
Everyone uses an umbrella, Cody.
I just feel like, in football, you don't have an umbrella out there. You're playing. When we were at practice I think it was the pro day practice.
Oh my gosh.
And then I actually caved and got an umbrella.
Yeah, because it was a downpour and you were like
later,
too manly to use an umbrella.
My wife was, when I was leaving, she said, take your umbrella. You'll be good.
Thank you, Paige. Then go to the podcast.
But yeah, no, we're here. We're putting another episode. We're putting another episode out. And we're going to be a lot more consistent this offseason, so I'm excited.
Yes, I love how you just wrangled us back in, even though I was trying.
Brought it back together.
Very, very proud of you. Before we jump into it, just want to give a thanks to Audi. Performance is more exhilarating on a real road. Introducing the Audi Q5. Visit your SoCal Audi dealers, proud sponsors of the USC Trojans. And at Ralph's, everyone wins when it comes to saving big, because when you order online through the Ralph's app, you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery that you do in store. So no matter how you shop, you always save big at Ralph's. Ralph's, fresh for everyone, fight on. So like I mentioned, there's kind of like a showcase going on this week for some of the almost Trojans. First one, like we mentioned, is the East-West Shrine Bowl. It's going to air on 5 p.m. Thursday night in Texas. Again, we're recording this on a Thursday mid-afternoon.
Yeah,
so
almost Thursday
you're
night.
going to listen to this and be like, oh, yeah, it happened.
Yeah.
But Taj Washington, Solomon Byrd, and Christian Wallace are participating in it. Very excited to see what they will be able to do. And then on Saturday, the 3rd, at 11 Pacific in Mobile, Alabama. I think I said that right.
Alabama.
The Senior Bowl is taking place with Marshawn Lloyd and Brendan Rice. And I got to say, there are a lot of reporters there at the Senior Bowl. And the practices leading up, Marshawn Lloyd and Brendan Rice have been turning heads. You can hear, like, in the videos of some of their individual reps, people are going, whoa, because they're impressing, which is pretty cool to see. And then Marshawn Lloyd, always fun to talk to. He's very good media relation-wise, and he had a great interview, I think, a couple days ago, where he said Southern Cal, and that's what you have to say when you go to both USCs. He said going to Southern Cal was the best thing for me. So I just thought that was really cool to see them doing their thing right now in their showcases.
Yeah, and expanding on that real quick, with Marshawn Lloyd, I love the way he spoke about, it's tough sometimes. And we've talked a lot about the transfer portal, having to go new places, learn a new offense. Obviously, when I was here at USC, I had to learn multiple offenses. But he said how important it was for him to get to USC, to learn this offense under Lincoln Riley, how quick he had to learn it. That way he can compete for a starting spot. That way he could be ready to play in the fall. He could be out there not having questions. And we saw, at the beginning of the year, if you remember, he started a little bit slow and felt like he was pressing a little bit, but you could see that comfortability over time. And that is so important at the next level. And that was kind of what the interview was about. And like you mentioned, I love the way he speaks about USC. He loves a Trojan, and just, he was only here for a year, and just how much pride he had about being a Trojan and talking about USC football. But the way he said, how important it is in the NFL to, you're going to get drafted, then you got to learn an offense. You have rookie minicamp, which from the time you get drafted is about 10 days to going to rookie minicamp, and then you have a couple-hour install, and then you're on the field. It is go time. That is part of the test, too, especially for some of these undrafted guys or lower-level guys that are fighting for a roster spot. How fast can you pick up the offense? How fast can you be ready if someone goes down to fill in a spot? And that is so important. And that's what Marshawn's getting to show right now, and all these other guys at these bowl practices is, we just got here a couple days ago. Now we're putting on full practices, full go with guys we've never played with, a bunch of new faces, and then we're going to have to go out and perform at the game as well. So that was awesome for him to say that. I think that was super important. But, going back to the main point is these practices, yes, support the Trojans in the game. Please watch it. You support our guys and root for them again tonight. If you happen to watch it, great. But on the 3rd, if you can watch Brendan Rice and Marshawn Lloyd, obviously the support would be great. But it is so important, the practices compared to the game, because this is the first time that you have NFL executives, you have head coaches. I mean, I can't tell you how many head coaches came out that first practice in Mobile and watched us throw, right? It was me. I think Carson Wentz was out there, Dak Prescott. We had a pretty solid group of guys. I can't remember the other guys that were on our team, but it was a good group of guys out there. And when we were throwing, I mean, there were multiple coaches within 10, 15 yards just watching you warm up. And those practices are so hands-on. And we played for the Cowboys staff. Jason Garrett was the head coach at the time, that the practices are so much more important than the game, which sounds cliche, I guess, to say when it comes to football. But this is the one time that really is true. Yeah, it's more of a showcase, and it's fun to watch what you can do in a game setting. But this is the first time, it's almost like a mini combine, right, or a mini pro day, that these staff and these coaching staffs can get out there, and NFL executives, these owners and GMs can watch you in person. And I promise you, they're watching every single rep. So to see that these guys are doing such a great job already is awesome to see, and they're off to a great start.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, is like, how much do these showcase bowls really matter in the long run? Sometimes it feels like they're a little bit performative, but from what you're saying, it seems like it is the first like ground level of getting to see some guys in action.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important. I think for especially guys like, so Caleb's obviously was invited probably to all these, but he's not going to go. If you're a surefire top 10, top 15 pick, even first round, if you don't think there's any way that you can really rise in the draft stock, you're not going to go risk getting hurt. You're not going to go out there and have a bad performance, maybe show some things that didn't go well, or have an opportunity to lose, because Caleb really can't go any higher than where he's at right now, right? But for guys like Brendan Rice and Marshawn Lloyd, who in my opinion could maybe sneak into the end of the first if they're really looking at it, but I think maybe day 2 guys, maybe a second or third round pick, and then Taj Washington, Solomon Byrd, Christian Wallace. Again, you know how high I am on Taj, but some of those guys, maybe day 2, day 3, those 4, 5, 6 round guys, maybe 7th round guys, or even undrafted free agent. These are so important because, yes, they've seen your game tape, but they haven't really seen you in person. Now, you have scouts that'll go to practices throughout the year. You know, when you watch those big-time games, when it's SC, UCLA, or SC Notre Dame, oh, the Patriots, the Chargers, so-and-so's in attendance for this game. They're watching the game. Very often, or very rarely, do you have a head coach in attendance? Do you have an offensive coordinator? Do you have a GM in attendance? Because it's seasons during the same time for NFL and college. This is the first time where coaches and GMs can go watch your tape and then go watch you in person and say, hey, we had concerns about this guy getting in and out of breaks, right? And then you go watch the practice and you say, wow, Taj does a great job of running his in and out routes or running his quick out routes. I love that didn't really translate on film. Or, hey, Marshawn Lloyd looked great out of the backfield. He had a great wheel route that Michael Penix Jr. threw him down the sideline. Hey, we were kind of questioning what he was as a pass catcher out of the backfield, and they get to see that in person. And for some guys, it can skyrocket your draft stock. It really can. I've seen guys go from that flirting with the day 3 picks, jumping up to day 2 because of these bowl games, because of the combine, and because of these pro days.
I had a friend who actually went to cover the Senior Bowl, and he said that Mobile is just swarming. With everyone you could imagine for this whole week. Yes. It's insane how much of like a hub it becomes during this time frame. I mean, as a player, do you get to network with anyone or talk with anyone in that sense? Yeah,
it's funny. I was actually, when we were talking about this episode, going back through my phone, I have so many contacts from those weeks that are like John Smith, right? Just making up a name or so-and-so. And then in parentheses, I'd put Chargers. Or parentheses, I'd put Bengals QB coach. Bengals OC or Steelers assistant Q, like whoever it may be, just from that week alone, probably got over 30 to 40 contacts because of the meetings you're doing. And that's, yes, the Senior Bowl. That's the big one, if you will. That's the higher end players, as they say. But again, this East-West Shrine Bowl, if you go down the list, there's tons of players that played in that game as well. For Taj, for Solomon Byrd, for Christian Wallace. So there's scouts at both. I'm just speaking more about the Senior Bowl because I played in that one. I didn't play in the East-West, but that's not to take away from that game at all. That's still very important. This whole process from the day that the Holiday Bowl ended up until draft day is every single day is important. But yeah, like you said, it's crazy. I remember when I first got there, I think you do like weigh-ins, height, weight. They get all your official measurements because they lie a little bit on some of the college sites. But you get all your official measurements. And I think within the first 15 minutes of me checking into my hotel going down, I got a text from, I don't remember who, but it was, hey, Cody, this is so-and-so from the Chargers. Can we meet downstairs in the cafeteria in 5 minutes? And I'm, yeah, sure. And then as soon as that ends, you get another text. Hey, this is so-and-so from the Bengals. Can we meet in 5? This is so-and-so from the Jaguars. You have 10 minutes for me. Like, these guys have to do their interviews as well, but you are just constantly, it's almost a little preview for the combine. It's not as hectic as the combine, but it's pretty dang close. And then also, you're going out and having full padded practices as well and having to learn a playbook and do position meetings, team meetings, offensive meetings, all of that. So it really is testing. How are you going to respond? And that's why, kind of tying it back into that Marshawn Lloyd interview, that's why it's so important. And I love what he said about Lincoln Riley was it is so important to show how fast you can adapt, how coachable you are, because talent can only get you so far. Being able to be coachable, learning an offense, and then going out and performing, that's the most important part in my opinion. And then the talent in the other, because everyone at this level is going to have talent. Sure. Everyone who's drafted, whether you're undrafted or you're a first-round pick. Now, there's obviously the superstars and the high-end level guys, but everyone at the NFL level deserves to be there. It's just how well you perform, how well you can adapt, and how well you can go out and put out good things on tape.
So leading up to this, is there anything you can do to maybe like sharpen your football IQ to be ready for these, bang-bang situations or scenarios? Or are you just kind of hoping that your college prep will help you when you go to these showcases or combine, et cetera?
Yeah, it's both. I'm glad you asked that. It's both of those. The first one, and I think the most important, is college prep. Right? Obviously, that's why when guys are picking the schools that they want to go to, it really is important to look at how well do they produce talent, how well do they develop talent, and how well do guys do in the NFL from those schools, right? And that was a big part for me going to USC. If you look at the wall before you walk into the team meeting room in McKay Center, the number of guys that are drafted, the number of guys that are first-round picks, second, third-round picks that played in the NFL, that had opportunities to go to the next level because of how well USC has done developing guys and getting them to that level. So that's a huge part. But also when I was going through the combine prep, as soon as the Holiday Bowl ended, the first thing you do is meet with agencies, right, who you're going to sign with. And I remember literally on the way back from the Holiday Bowl, I stopped in Santa Ana at this place called the Mark Apartments where they train. It's called Proactive Trainings, Proactive Sports Performance, which is an amazing place. I'm still with Athletes First to this day now on the broadcasting side of things for my agency, but unbelievable what they do there. But I remember stopping there literally on my way back to clean out my apartment from the Holiday Bowl my senior year and did a full tour, met with the agency, did all those things.
This is the same night as the Holiday Bowl?
This was the day after. So
okay, I was like, wow. Okay.
We stayed the night. I stayed one extra night there, and then on the way back that next day, we already had it planned, but I stopped and did all those visits and everything. But yeah, it's as soon as that last game ends, you are right into that. And then once I signed with them, you did training, and with Proactive, we obviously did weightlifting training, all that, mobility, speed, and strength training and all that. But I also had a quarterback coach, and at the time I worked with a guy named Steve Calhoun, who was not only on the field but off the field as well, because he's trained other quarterbacks that have done the Senior Bowl, that have done the Combine. Because when you walk in to these meeting rooms, especially at the Combine, they will say, hey, look at this playbook for 5 minutes, and they'll show you 20 plays. And it's literally, okay, cross. And some of the plays you've done before, but some of them are concepts to kind of screw you up a little bit and throw you off that may never be used in a game. And they'll look at them, and then they'll get up there and say, hey, show me gun, Z right, or gun dual right, Z right, 42 dual, blah, 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 all these words, and draw it up on the board. After you've just looked at this playbook for 5 minutes, that's what you do in your Combine prep. That's what I did with Calhoun and my other training stuff.
How do you prep for that? That feels like almost like a memorization thing.
It really is. And it's some of the good ones too are they'll ask you your favorite play. That was my favorite. Was, hey, draw up your favorite cover 2 play. You're going against cover 2. What was your favorite cover 2 beater? What was your favorite man beater? What was your favorite cover 3? That's where I thrived. And I did well too. I remember having a meeting with the Saints at the Combine, my first formal meeting, they call them at the Combine. I walk in and I sit down, and it's head coach, GM, offense coordinator. Cody, look at this playbook. You got 15 minutes to study, 10 minutes to study, and we're going to get you up on the whiteboard. And it's that fast, and it's that quick of a turnaround. So, but the prep for that, like I said, is working with a coach, a private coach, because you don't have a team coach at this point anymore, right? I'm not going to work with...
You're solo.
Yeah, any of the coaches that were at USC, right? I think, because obviously Helton took over as head coach, and Tuiasosopo was our quarterback coach. I'm not working with them anymore. You've got to go out, and your agency will pay for them and hire them, but find a personal quarterback coach that knows what it takes to be successful off the field as well at these Combine, at these Senior Bowl events. Unfortunately, I had Steve Calhoun, who knew a lot about this, and he said, hey, I've worked with plenty of guys that have been in the Combine. I've pulled from them some of the tests that they give you there, so we're going to study these. So we would have,
interesting, okay,
I think an hour, a couple hours a day or every other day doing those Combine and Senior Bowl prep stuff. But it's, even as much as you prepare, it's still crazy in the moment to have to be ready to go, be sharp, and on maybe 4 or 5 hours of sleep as well each night. So it's tough.
Could people tell that you were a film football nerd junkie?
Yeah, that was
Did
a
that
big
play
part.
well?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big part of me in these meetings and helping myself out. And I played well. I had a really good week at the Senior Bowl, played well in the game. And there's a couple other draft stories I'm going to save for the Combine episodes, because I know we're going to break that down.
In a couple of weeks,
Combine. Yeah, when we get to the Combine, because I know we're going to want to, follow that closely, obviously, with some of these guys. So I got some more stories there. But, yeah, it really does help, because unless you're like a top first-round guy, they have to understand how you'll be as a backup. And remember the Matt Barkley episode where we were sitting, if you haven't watched that, I know I brought it up before, but we did an interview with Matt Barkley, and stay tuned, we're going to do some more interviews coming up. But talking about him being the starter and how important it is as a backup to treat every day like a starter. And we saw Miller Moss. He treated every day, every practice, as if I'm the starter, although he knows Caleb Williams is the guy. Yeah. And you saw how well he performed in the Holiday Bowl. You have to impress in these meetings and show that you can learn the offense, although you may not be that first-round top 5 pick that's coming in to be the starter day one. And even if you are, you have to understand you're going to have to learn for a couple of years before you get on the field. Now, I didn't have that luxury. I had to play as a rookie because of injuries and got thrown out there right away. But the prep that I had through OTAs, through fall camp, learning behind RG3 and Josh McCown, leading up to when I did start, helped me be successful my rookie year. But yeah, that's a huge part of it, is how well can this guy adapt, not only on the field, they want to see your arm and accuracy and all that, but how well can he learn a playbook in case there is an injury or something happens? We have to put this guy on the field and be the face of the franchise and go run this football team. Can he learn an offense and still be supportive even though he's not the starter?
This is just wild. Now, I feel like the constant underlying theme through all of this is like you have to be so confident in yourself,
yes,
in any scenario that may come up, is that something that obviously you've trained since whenever you started playing football, but how are you able to adapt to each situation and know, like, not only do I need to do this, but I need to do this super well for my future?
Yeah, and I'll say this. For me, it was more the mental side of things. There's going to be a lot of highs. There's going to be high moments in your career throughout this process, throughout the combine, all this stuff. There's going to be a lot of lows, right? You have to be able to put that all aside and really have a short-term memory to be able to go on to the next thing. Because there were interviews that I did to where I went out there and I was like, did I crush that? I don't know. But then I have to put that behind me and then go do the next one. And you also have to remember, too, when you're doing this process, there were days when I maybe did 15 interviews in a 4.5 hour period.
And your brain is mush.
But, yeah, and you're done. But you have to remember that the first one, when you're high of energy, all that, that's your first time meeting the Jaguars, right? But then you're doing interview 15, although it may be your 15th interview and you're done and you're tired and you're exhausted. That is your first time impression with that coach. So you can't just go in there and say, man, I'm at 15, coach, I'm tired. Hey, what do you think about this? And start half button the interview, you know, and being checked out already. You have to be on it from, like I said, the moment that bowl game ends, because you're going to have requests to do private workouts as well. Teams are going to, which I did a couple of those. I did one with the Patriots, which I ended up signing later on, and they remembered that workout where I did over here on Howard Jones on the turf field, where
That's crazy,
hey, we're requesting a private meeting. They have you where they have official type visits where I flew to Cleveland, who ended up drafting me before the combine, or I think after the combine, where you did a full visit in-house in Berea at their facilities. So all these crazy things. But back to your question, I mean, you just have to be mentally locked in. It's going to be tough. You have to accept that there's going to be a lot of highs, a lot of lows throughout this whole process, but you have to be locked in and give it your best every time you do an interview, every time you perform on the field, and even some of the stuff you're doing on your own, eating right, the prep, the work behind the scenes, all that has to be perfect leading up to draft day, and then that's just the beginning.
The wild part, too, is like I was just thinking about, USC's in-house pro day, and you talk about having to do everything right on your own. It really is like, quote-unquote, judgment day, because you can have all the excuses, you can pump yourself up, all that stuff, but then you see like all these NFL scouts crowding around this bench, and it's you and the weight, and either you're going to do it or you're not.
And they don't care what it took. I mean, obviously they want to know your background and what type of player you are and type of work ethic you have, but like you said, in that moment, none of that matters. They don't care. When I'm out there at pro day throwing, they don't care how many workouts I've done, how tired I am. They want to know what it took to get there and how I'm going to perform in front of them in a high-pressured moment. Think about it right now. I mean, college is 12 weeks, 14 maybe. If you get, like, guys hurt at the end of the season. The Super Bowl. Some guys have gone 17 weeks without a break. They don't care. You got to go out and perform one more week, whether you're the 49ers or the Chiefs. No one's going to, the Super Bowl trophy doesn't care if your knee hurts a little bit, if your arm hurts a little bit. You've got to go out and perform and be the best that you can be to help your team win a championship. And that's so important. That's a great point. I'm glad you said that. They don't care in that moment. That's a great visual.
It's so serious.
When you're doing the bench press and all the coaches are around screaming at you, and you have the Wiley up there spotting you, screaming at you. That moment is so important.
But it's so quiet.
Yeah.
It's just like Wiley, coaching you up, but it's so quiet. Everyone's watching
Locked in.
It's the most like put up or shut up moment I've ever seen.
Well, you watch the combine. I mean, you see the 40-yard dash.
Sure,
It's in. They do it at Lucas Oil Stadium at the Colts, the Indianapolis Colts, where they play, and I think they started allowing more fans now.
Yeah.
But when I did it, it was literally however many, 60, 70,000 people that can fit in that stadium. And it's just executives, just coaches, and the players on the field. It is dead quiet. And you could hear a pin drop in a 70,000 person stadium. And you've got all these head coaches with binoculars watching you run a 40. And it's a high pressure moment. It's intense. But that's why you saw the best one I saw, or one of the most recent history, was DK Metcalf. Remember after he ran his 40 and what he ran, how hard he was crying? It's just that release.
Yeah.
But there's also other guys who don't perform well at those events, and it's tears for another reason. So you have to put everything you have into that. 40-yard dash is, for some guys, for me it was 4.8 seconds, which I'm proud of. But some guys, it's 4 seconds, right? 4 to 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But you put all this time and effort into those 4 to 5 seconds, which has so much weight going into draft day, right? For these coaches to see how fast this guy can run, all this stuff. But all that starts in the offseason, putting that work in leading up to those days. And look at us. I'm loving this episode. I didn't know how much, if we were going to have a ton to talk about, but it's such interesting stuff, especially for fans who, they watch the pro days, they watch the combines, and then they watch draft day, but you really don't understand the process and what it's like behind the scenes getting to those moments.
Is it a weird, or was it, I should say, was it a weird flip for you to switch? Because literally hours between you playing a team game for your college, last final college game, and now you're in like individual mode.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And you're in your professional individual, trying to make my future the best as possible. Is it hard to flip that switch? And it's just like several months where you have to really do that.
Yeah, the positive part of that, and this is something I've never thought of. You're asking great questions, but
Cody's surprised that I do this for a living.
No. But kidding. It's like it's making me think too. Back to those is true. Like we lost that game against Wisconsin, right? The last game, the Holiday Bowl, it ended. We lost that game, crying on the field, hugging the coaches, hugging the players, and the very next day, I had to go do an interview, obviously, or a meeting with an agency who was trying to sign me and be on my A game and know that in a couple weeks' time, I'm going to be traveling to Mobile, Alabama. I'm going to have these you have to get over it
quick.
And how much I put into USC and all the, I know I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the coaching change, all just the
so much
emotional, it just drained me emotionally.
Yeah.
And my heart was still bleeding cardinal and gold at that time, but you have to flip that switch. But to the team element of it is, yes, you're selfish during this time, but when I signed with Athletes First, I was only quarterback, but there was also, I think, 15 other guys, 17, 18 other guys that signed. So I had receivers to throw with. I had guys to train with. Max Turk was with them as well. So I knew familiar faces that signed with Athletes First that I worked out with. I got to throw with Corey Coleman, who was a first-round pick. I got to work with Jalen Ramsey, who was going up against us out there. So you still had that team environment.
Okay.
And I met a lot of great guys throughout that. And you're training with them, and they put you, offensive guys work out on these days. So you're still on a set schedule, and it is a team environment. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's a huge part of your life where you have to be selfish in football. And the other time I say that you have to be selfish is when you're picking a school. So it's one of those other moments where you have to do what's best for you. If you have to block out relationships, maybe if you have to block out family for a little bit, obviously you have the support system, but if you have to push all that aside for the next 4 months leading up to the draft, it is so important those next couple of months of doing everything right and putting yourself in the best position to set yourself up for success. That's what we all dream of is playing in the NFL and hearing our name on draft day.
It's so funny because you talk about those two time frames where you need to be selfish. One of them, when you're a prospect, I feel like it's so much about you and what the team can do for you or the university. And then suddenly it's like you get slapped a little bit when you're a NFL hopeful. You're like, I'll do anything.
Yeah.
It's just
and you don't have, the choice is gone now.
The leverage.
When you're a college player, schools are recruiting you. That's another one. That's pretty funny. Like, you're getting recruited and schools are, hey, we have this offer. When I was getting all these scholarships, you come in and be the guy this day one.
You're in
you'll
the
come
driver's
in.
seat.
Yeah. They want you and now NIL, here, take this money, do all this. Well, when it goes to the NFL, impress us now. They get to sit back and say, you impress us. Tell us about Cody Kessler. Help us to buy stock in Cody Kessler to come be a part of our organization to make our team better, instead of these schools saying, hey, Cody Kessler, buy stock in USC because you're going to make us better in this, X, Y, Z, or how we can help you fulfill your dreams. But yeah, it's a great point. And it's crazy. That's why I say there's so many highs and so many lows throughout your football career, even back to like Little League, going to high school, college. Some of the high school kids that I train nowadays, there's just a lot going into it that you really have to be like level, was it mentally level or stable or in the sense
even.
of just even kill all the time. You can't let the highs be too high and the lows be too low. You have to understand that, and that's in any sport, and I guess that's in anything too, in work and and when your position, our position now, you're going to have great opportunities. You're going to get raises. You're going to have talks to people are going to talk to you saying, hey, you got to do this better. So you have to be able to learn, adapt, and be coachable in really anything you do. But football is a high, and that's something that you don't learn about a lot. And that's something that I had a coach actually by the name of Jim Laurent. He was my second ever tackle football coach in junior high. I played for the Jack Frost. We played for the Eagles.
Okay.
And he taught me, his saying, and it still stuck with me to this day, is football is a game of emotion. And that was something he drilled into our brains as kids, and it stuck with me. And it was obviously, that was the saying we would say, is football is a game of emotion. And then he would go off that and say, how you handle that emotion determines the type of player you're going to be and the type of leader you're going to be. And it stuck with me to this day. I was fortunate enough to do the Hall of Fame in Bakersfield. He came to the event, and I said that story, and it was pretty emotional. But yeah, it is. You really have to be able to weather the storm and keep a level head throughout this entire process.
Have you seen players, and I'm specifically curious with the NFL, be hampered by that mental side of the game?
See guys break?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen guys.
Crazy.
I'll never say any names, but I've seen guys at the combine. Like you see some of these guys, like, the Wonderlic test.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a and it's a basic level test, right? And I'll explain it more when we get to the
It's
combine.
stressful though. You explained it last year.
So you got 60 minutes for 60 questions, and the questions are like, some of them will be, what's 2 + 4? And it's like, all right, 6, cool. Then some of them will be,
For some reason, I thought you got that wrong. But yes.
I hope not. If I did, please cut this.
Yeah.
And then some of them will be, if I'm traveling 50 miles per hour for 45 minutes, I'm just making something up. Obviously,
Sure.
there's no answer to this, but for 45 minutes, and then I stop and walk for 10 minutes at 3 miles per hour. And then
Yeah.
how long does it take me to get from 60 miles, right? So
Sure.
those are some of them where you're skipping this. I'm not going to sit here. Like, you got to understand which ones to skip. But like people think, oh man, this guy got a 4 or 5 on the Wonderlic. No, guys are just mentally checked out. This is like day 5, day 3 probably, or 4 at the combine, to where you've gotten 4 hours of sleep a night. You've done countless interviews. You've had to sell yourself to multiple teams just consistently and be up and bright and, hey, draft me because, and then you have to go take this test or you have to go perform, and guys may not look as great. They don't understand. Like I said, I've seen some guys mentally break at the combine and at some of these things to where it's tough. Now, I can never remember it being that extreme when you get to the NFL. Now, the pressure is a big part, right? When I started as a rookie in Cleveland, my first week starting, I was the last one at the facility and the first one in every morning because I was, there's a lot of pressure as a rookie. You got to perform, go out there. You got to guys with families and are a lot older than your college buddies who are now depending on you as the quarterback of the team. So it's good to have that stress as you lead up and see how you're going to handle it. But nothing as crazy as these 4 months in this process, even close when you're in the NFL.
It's interesting because I Tuli Pelotu stopped by practice this fall, I think during one of the Chargers bye weeks, and he was saying in one of his answers, he was like, everyone told me that the NFL would just be so businesslike and you'd had no fun, but he was like, I'm having fun while being professional. So I thought that was interesting, that dichotomy. Yeah,
and huge shout out to Tuli. He had a great year this year for the Chargers. He's going to have a great future there with that organization. But yeah, it was. That's why I say, like, this part of the process is, it's almost like they try to break you. They try to see how mentally tough you are. They try to scare you. They try to give you everything and see how you can handle it. Because when I got to the NFL, it was the same way. It wasn't as intense. Now, yes, it is a business, and there are, I guess, politics in the NFL in the sense of draft. Like, that's why you understand, like, the draft is important, because if you're a first-round guy and you're struggling, you're going to get more opportunities than a fifth. You have those little bit more leeway. Like, there was a reason this guy was a first-round pick as opposed to a guy who's undrafted or a lower-round guy, not as many opportunities, right? So that part matters in it. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, if you can play, you're going to play, right? Remember, think back to the Eagles. They had Carson Wentz, who was playing well. They just signed him a big contract, and they signed Jalen Hurts in the second round. He ends up taking over, right? And a lot of people scratch their head, but it is a business to where they want to replace you. They are always looking for your replacement. Who's going to be, if they can find someone better, they will, right? Now, unless they invest a lot of money in a first-round pick and all of that, they're going to give you more time. But at the end of the day, if you're a later-round guy or you're lower on the roster, they are constantly looking for your replacement. And outside of that, though, like, it is fun. I had a blast in the NFL. I had some great teammates, some great locker room moments. It is, but I'm with Tuli on that. It's not as stressful as the lead up to that and how they tell you that it's going to be. But at the end of the day, you still got to be even keel the entire time and be mentally locked in and be mentally tough.
Given what you just described about the business aspect of it, how did you not get jaded during that? Like, I feel like that's such an easy thing to do because it gets a little cutthroat there.
Yeah, there's some questions that I won't repeat some of them, but there's some questions you get that make you want to be, and there are some coaches too that you can tell don't want to be interviewing you. Like, there was one of them was, and I tell this story because I love the guy and we had a great relationship, but Pep Hamilton was my offensive coordinator in Cleveland my first year. We had a great relationship. He helped me a ton. I had a great year, and we joke about it now, but when I was going through that process, he was my last interview of the night, and I was his last interview of the night, right? So we're both exhausted. And I remember Pep sitting down, and I gave him, the first day I signed with him, I gave him a hard time. And I ended up going and doing a formal, or not a formal, but I forgot what they call them, but it's a private, I guess, when you go and do an official visit at their facilities.
Okay.
And we got a lot more time together, and he was more well rested and all of that. But I gave him a hard time. But I remember sitting down, and he was like, all right, where'd you go? Okay, what's this? What's that? Blah, blah, blah. Just kind of like, didn't want to be here. And I'm like, Coach, I want this. And I'm giving like full on answers, trying to be uppity and all this. And I can tell he's like, checking his phone. And we joked about it, but that's the same thing. Like, you have to be able, or was he testing me? Was it, hey, I'm not going to give this guy my full attention. Let's see how well he's still in tune. So you never know. And
mind games.
It's a mind game. And then you hear some of these stories about some of these, I guess, inappropriate questions or some weird questions. I'm not going to repeat any of them, but if you want to hear some, you can go online.
What? Wow.
Have you never seen these?
No, I don't think so.
Where they ask some pretty inappropriate questions at these combines. Now, I think
Goodness.
they've cleaned that up a little bit, but it used to be a free-for-all. But they're
Wow.
they're investing a lot of money into you to come perform. Like, they have to get this right, and they're going to do
Wow.
everything they can to test you and break you. And
Wow.
but again, it's a fun process. You've got to enjoy it. You've got to laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll never forget when we finished the combine. We were all flying back. It was me, Corey Coleman, Sterling Shepard, a guy by the name of Joe Schobert, played linebacker. It was all of us, Turk. We were all leaving the same day, and I'll never forget, we got to the airport, and it was like we all just like let out a big sigh of relief, and it was just like, because next was pro day, and that's where you're
Okay.
back comfortable, you're home,
Yeah.
you're in front of your own environment, you can control that day, right? You're in charge of that day. But as soon as it ended, I just remember going back to the airport, a huge sigh of relief, and I don't remember who it was, but they were like, we got an hour till the flight. Who wants to go to the bar? And we were all, I'm going, me. And it was, but it was like a celebration moment. It was a
Yeah.
cool moment. Some of us
That's awesome.
performed really well. But yeah, it is a grueling 4 months, and we'll talk about it more when the combine gets around. But shout out to these guys. I know what they're going through right now. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but it sounds like they're performing well. So I'm excited for them.
Awesome. Any other thoughts, Cody, before we go into questions?
No, that was good. I enjoy talking about that stuff. I love going down memory lane. Some of it may be a little tough. Like I said, some of these
Aw.
stories aren't great, but no, not in like a bad way.
Painful.
No, just more like,
Oh.
I remember what it felt like to wake up at 4 a.m. when you went to bed at 1 a.m. when your last interview ended at midnight, and now you have to go do
Yep.
another interview and then go to practice and at the Senior Bowl or
Sounds
go
like fall
perform.
season.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
exactly. It's fall camp.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was crazy. But no, I love telling those stories, and I can't wait to see these guys perform in these games and also in the combine and pro day as well.
Alrighty, Cody, we got to jump into questions. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What if there was a portal to the future? Enter the fully electric Audi Q4 e-tron with an advanced touchscreen infotainment system. Audi, the future awaits. And take your health to the next level with Symbiotica. Their premium, easy-to-take supplements fuel your body with key vitamins and minerals to help you reach peak performance on and off the field. I'm laughing because, Cody, you're like helping me through this.
Nailed minerals.
Elevate your health today by going to Symbiotica.com and use code FIGHTON for 15% off site. Why?
Fight on.
Alrighty, our first question comes from Rama. He said, can defensive players get a playbook to start practicing in their PRPs? I think what he's asking is, do the defensive players already have a preview to what they will be learning in spring?
Yeah, you. So now I don't know obviously what they're doing in today's PRPs, but when I was there, we would write our own scripts, right? We would come up. Now we would work closely with the coaches. Hey, what are day 1, day 2, day 3 install going to look like? And you kind of get a little bit of a jump start on that. But you understand too, day 1's normally quick game. Day 2, you get in maybe some of the 5-step stuff, 7-step later on, 3rd down, red zone later on. So as you go through the PRPs, you try to tailor that as closely as you can to what spring ball is going to be like, right? So when we did the first player ran practice, we're doing all quick game today. We're doing all 3-step drop stuff that I know that we're going to put in on day 1. And then when we do the second PRP and so on and so forth, like I said, you try to keep that closely to spring ball. And I'm sure they're doing the same thing nowadays because, especially when you have some of these new faces and some of these younger guys, you want them to get a jump start instead of getting thrown out there in spring, right? I remember my first day of spring was absolutely terrifying, but we had so many player ran practices before, and Matt Barkley did a great job of leading those and running those for both the offense and TJ McDonald on defense, to where you got a little preview of what spring ball is going to be like and how important that was. But it's also up to leadership, right? What you guys want to work on. There could be defensive players out there right now that were here a year ago that said, hey, I know this is what day 1, day 2 is going to look like, but let's work on our 3rd down defense. Let's work on 3rd and 8. Let's work on man-to-man coverage today that they can tailor to themselves. That's the beauty of it, is that the players run it. But that's a great question, and I get flashbacks. I remember how much fun those days were doing those player ran practices where it felt like you were kind of in charge and you really built that camaraderie and that continuity during those times.
Alan had a question about PRPs too, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit. He was kind of wondering the coach's responsibility, and obviously the coaches can't be a part of PRPs, but I was just curious and I'm making this Alan's question as well.
Yeah.
What are the coaches doing once they get back from this recruiting palooza? Like, what does the lead up to spring camp look like coaching wise? And I know you've never been in that room, but curious.
I mean, obviously the first thing they're going to do is come up with that spring game plan, right? Or spring practice plan, right? How these days are going to look. They've got to put together the schedule. They've got to put together what they want to work on. They've got to make sure they're on the same page, right? And especially when you're on the offensive side of the ball, we would learn what the defense was installing as well, because we needed to know what coverages we're going to face that day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you would learn them, but it was also, hey, don't be surprised. Today we're going to see some cover 2 and cover 6, okay? Later on this week, the defense is going to install man-to-man or blitz 0, these different things, so we could prepare for them as well. So, obviously, you got to work closely, offense and defense, what the days or what the install days are going to look like so that they can work together Because if we're going to put in a heavy passing day on offense, you're not going to want to run one high with the safety in the box the entire day, right? You're going to want to put in your cover 2s, your cover 4, your cover 6s, those 2 high looks to get ready for pass days. But outside of that, I mean, I know they start meetings before spring ball. I think you can do like quick, I don't know if you still can. We used to be able to do like quick little meetings, kind of check-in meetings and go over a couple things or report how PRPs were going and all that. I don't know what the rules are like nowadays, but outside of that, spring is really when it's welcome back. Outside of the strength staff, let's hit the ground running on day one, and the coaches and the players kind of get back and connected and everything.
Now, we have a lot of quarterback questions, Cody, so I don't know if you want to sprinkle out your answers, but the People's Champ said, what is Miller Moss's ceiling? Can he be an elite SC quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to base his ceiling off of that Holiday Bowl performance, I absolutely think so. I mean, that's just a glimpse of what he can do. But that was what I was saying last episode is he going to be hailed now? And he would say the same thing. Am I the all-time great? Am I going to be the heir to Caleb Williams, the next Heisman Trophy, all of those things? No, he's not going to say that yet. Now, is it possible? Absolutely. But for him, that's just one step in a long journey, right? You've got to put together a full season, right? You've got to be consistent. And that's what we talked about last episode was what does consistency look like for Miller right now? That's player-ran practices, being the leader out there, getting guys where they need to be, making great throws day in and day out, getting these younger guys, the Deuces and the Jacoby Lanes, Mekhi Lemon, Zachariah Branch, although he played a lot, getting these guys built up a little bit and getting them ready to go. How does that leadership role take over now? Because you're the guy. It's not you and Caleb collectively. It's not someone else that you're the backup and you can add stuff in here and there and the starter is going to do all the talking. You are the guy. You got to be that leader day in and day out. It's a tough job. You're at USC. Greatness at the quarterback position is expected, and he's obviously playing behind someone who just won the Heisman, so he's got some big shoes to fill. But at the end of the day, it's just being consistent, right? Being the same person day in and day out. Guys can tell, and this is kind of a different point, but I'm not worried about this for Miller, but guys can tell when you're someone as a backup and then all of a sudden you become someone else as a starter, right? They can see through that. You'll lose a locker room very quickly if you try to be all of a sudden be a hard butt or, all of a sudden be someone who's a rah guy and you weren't before. Just be who you are. Guys are going to love
authenticity.
Yeah, exactly. Guys are going to love that
authenticity.
Authenticity. Yeah, guys are going to love that a lot more than you doing what a leadership's supposed to, or what a leader's supposed to look like, and all of that.
Unquote,
but yeah, the next thing for him is going to be having a great PRPs going into spring, being consistent in spring. Obviously, next week, stay tuned. There will be some competition, and we can talk about that when the transfer is finalized. But it's his job to lose, right? And he's got to go out there with that mindset. This is my job. If you want it, come and take it. And I think his ceiling is going to be very high if he continues that mindset and builds off that performance from the Holiday Bowl.
Now, you just alluded to the fact that we can't talk about anyone yet. So I'm going to modify Zany SC's question. He said, hey, Cody, just heard on your last podcast that it's Miller Moss's start to lose. Just curious, and as someone who has experienced sharing snaps with another QB in games, could you see a Miller Moss / a different quarterback combo system work?
Short answer, no. No,
You've never spoken highly of.
I did it.
Yeah.
And it's a terrible feeling because, and it had to happen. I get it. Obviously, in Kiff, love Lane Kiffin to this day. Still do, and he's an awesome coach and love playing for him. He's doing great things at Ole Miss. But during that time, it was tough. I didn't love him a whole lot during that shared, that split quarterback moment because it was extremely difficult because you go through the whole offseason, you're competing, right? And you kind of know the writing on the wall. One of us is going to have to leave. Like, one of us will probably have to transfer unless you want to be a career backup and not play because we were the same exact class. We're talking about Max Whittick, who a friend of mine as well. And it was funny because we were good friends going through the same freshman orientation, all of that, knowing that day was coming, right? It was inevitable.
Goodness, yeah.
2 years down the line, it happened to be 2 years. Obviously, Matt Barkley stayed for his senior year, but we knew that time was coming, that it was going to have to be kind of cut off the communication. We can't like each other for a little bit. And we've got to compete. And that time did come, but it sprinkled into the season, right? We went through spring ball, fall camp. I was the 2 the first year. He was the 3. Then I was the 3 the second year. He was the 2. So we had no idea what was going to happen. And then it sprinkled into, and I felt like, obviously it might have been a little biased, but I felt like I'd won the job or I deserved it. So I was told the day before the game, you're starting, but we're going to play halves. You're playing the first half. Max is playing the second half. And it was so tough for me because you're not only trying to go out there and compete and win a game, you're still competing against another player. Like you're still in fall camp mode a little bit with the season starting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I was trying to
battles
beat Hawaii. Yeah, I was trying to beat Hawaii, but also I was trying to beat Max at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was tough because you were afraid to make a mistake. Right? There was no leash. I felt like, because I came out the first game, threw a touchdown, great. Then I threw a pick, and then I was done right before half. And it was on a screenplay, a little fluke. Tried to throw a screen to Buck. It got tipped, and they picked it.
Oh, goodness.
And in my mind, I'm done, right? I'm done. This is terrible. I'm never going to play again. I lost it. Max went out. Same thing. Didn't play as great. So we both had a very subpar performance. Then we go the next week. Hey, we're doing it again. Washington State. And I told you remember that dark moment where I threw that pick six, and I was laying on the turf. And right before half again, just thought the weight of the world was on my shoulders, and I'm going to have to transfer. Just bad thoughts. Max goes out. Doesn't perform as well, right? So then you go into the third game, and this is just where I kind of tie this back into the question, where I knew that I took that next step. We go into the third game against Boston College, and Kiffin texts me and says, hey, come to my office. I come to the office. He said, this is your shot. This is your game. I don't care what happens. You throw 5 picks, 5 touchdowns, I'm not taking you out. This is your game from start to finish. See what you can do, right? Missed the first throw, ended up throwing 16 straight completions right after that. Threw for like 260 and 2 or 3 touchdowns. Basically never looked back, right? I think I was like either set or was close to the record of most consistent completions or completions in a row in a game.
Yeah, consecutive.
Consecutive completions in a game. And it was, I missed the first throw and I missed the last throw. Outside of that, I didn't miss one. And and from that point on, I was a starter for the next 3 years. So that's why I go back to that point of that was the first time that I could play free, right? Now, are they going to have a 2-quarterback system in the sense of Miller may throw a lot, and if they have another guy come in that could have his own package, sure, I'm fine with that. Like you saw Michigan, who just won a national championship, do that, right? J.J. McCarthy was the guy, but Alex Orji, the backup, would come in and do those RPO zone read plays because he was a better runner than J.J., and they'd use those packages to get an advantage in the run game. So am I opposed to that? No, but the straight up splitting halves and splitting times and competing, I don't know who the starter is, we're going to play both. I'm not a big fan of that at all.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
Disney Dad, in a similar vein, said, how do you see the starting quarterback competition playing out?
I mean, the simple answer is it's Miller's job until it isn't, right? He has the leg up. He's been here. He has the closest connection with Lincoln Riley. He just played so well in the Holiday Bowl, and again, he's got to be consistent and continue to prove that day in and day out. But right now, it's Miller's job, right? If we were to start a game tomorrow, if there was a season tomorrow, or even spring ball, say that was week 1 and that was an actual game, I'm sure every single fan in USC, if you put a vote out, they would all say Miller Moss is the guy, right? So that's where it's at, and that's for Miller needs to be that when fall camp comes around. Now, there's going to be competition. Like I said, it's USC. You've got to compete day in and day out. Iron sharpens iron. You want that. You don't want to be comfortable, especially as a first-year starter, thinking this is my job. I've got nothing to worry about. But at the same time, you do want to focus more on, like I just said, get away from that competition level and get more into let's start winning football games. How am I going to perform against LSU in week 1? But that's a long way away. We got a while for that. But yeah, right now, if you had to ask me, it's Miller's job to lose, and he should be quarterback 1, on opening day.
We had a question, an interesting one from Sean Tong, who said, what/who are your 3 wishes on offense to make you feel comfortable in saying USC will win the Big Ten championship in year 1?
Okay, so first for me, got to replace some guys up front.
I was going to say offensive line.
Yeah, dominant offensive line. And I don't mean a solid offensive line. I mean a dominant offensive line. I mean a Michigan, a Georgia, a ferocious, very, I want 0 pressures allowed. I want, it's going to, because you're going to face some of the best pass rushers and pass rushers in the Big Ten. Dominant defensive lines. We've got to have a great offensive line. That's 1, right? Way up there. And there's a huge gap between probably 2 and 3. But 1 for me is offensive line. 2 would be just, obviously it's Miller's first year. I'd love to see Miller go out and dominate. I want him to have that year, like they said. Can he be an all-star? Can he be a big-time player? That's 2 for me, right? That's I think it goes offensive line, quarterback, and then 3 is building these. I guess it's not a wish. This is just more of, I guess, a checklist for me.
Yeah.
3 would be building up these younger guys, right? Getting Jacoby Lane more comfortable, Mekhi Lemon, Deuce Robinson, getting those guys more comfortable. Zachariah Branch, getting him more involved in the offense outside of just special teams and a couple trick gadget plays that we saw from this year, building that younger core, getting them comfortable with Miller and this offense. But yeah, 1 for me, and we're on the same page, has to be building a dominant offensive line. Yeah,
I would say offensive line, dominant offensive line, a confident quarterback, whoever that is.
Yeah, good point.
And then I would say probably like a solidified running back room. I feel like right now I don't fully know.
Yeah, that's going to be a good conversation when we do these offensive breakdowns is
Yeah, when we preview the spring,
everybody's gone, right?
Yeah, it seems like it's just a freshman room with
Yeah.
Amarian Peterson and Quentin Joyner. And forgive me, I don't have the roster in my head right now as clear as I usually do. But
well, we normally don't. We try not to look at the roster until all the transfer updates. Just so everyone knows, a little transparency. It's difficult as a broadcaster nowadays to look at a roster that you know may change before spring ball and all these transfers. Yeah, every second. But because obviously Austin's gone.
Yeah, because USC has relied on
Marshawn's gone.
The veteran older back for the last 2 years. You had Travis Dye, Austin Jones, Marshawn Lloyd, Austin Jones. You don't have any of those guys going into this next season. I feel like
Oh no, it was Austin Jones played a lot. Was the majority of the So he was so it's. I mean, and we saw some flashes from both Amarian Peterson and Quentin Joyner in the spring game. So I'm excited for both of them. But yeah, that's going to be a fun topic to follow, right? And last year, kind of the same thing, offensive line rotation. That's going to be another one. But I think, like you said, offensive line, running back, those will be two position battles that are going to be close to, or that's going to be great to follow this offseason.
Now, Jeremy said, can you share your thoughts on how USC would be able to win a championship in coming years? And it's kind of similar to the question we just had, but I feel like we didn't touch on the defense. So I definitely think D'Anton Lynn's defense taking hold and excelling obviously would
huge part
fuel that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say if you had to have me write up a script, head coach, check, right? We've got the right guy in place. Defensive coordinator now, both sides of the ball. Coordinators, obviously, Hinson and Coach Riley work together as offensive coordinators. Coach Riley calls the play. But on defensive side of the ball, D'Anton Lynn, defense coordinator, check. Can be dominant in the Big Ten. The staff around him, check. Now it gets to the players, right? We've got to be able to build, and I said this last week, from the trenches out. We've got to start with a dominant offensive line and a dominant defensive line. If you don't have both of those, you're not going to compete for championships. Are we there yet? No, we're going to continue to get there, but the next part of this would be recruiting, right? Not only transfer portal, but also these younger incoming freshmen. But what do you have to do that? We have to be aggressive in NIL. We have to have a better, and it used to be a simple answer, right? Get the right coaching staff and get the right players. We're done. But no, there's so much more to it. You've got to be able to retain guys, not lose guys in the portal to other NIL deals, to other offers, guys that may be, solidified starters that are going elsewhere to get better deals. You've got to be able to retain those guys. But we have to be able to compete in the NIL space aggressively. Not just, we're doing enough. We have to be able to consistently compete with Oregon, with Georgia, with Alabama, with Texas A&M, with these schools that constantly get these high 5-star players. We have to be able to compete with those guys and get those players as well if we want to build a national championship roster. For
sure. And it's just crazy how it evolves so much. It's like you may have a grasp on it and then the next day some new legislation or something comes out. So
I told you I thought I was familiar with the portal, and then I read about it, and there's like 4 windows now. There's so many crazy, and you have to have declared by this window, or you can't redeclare by this. It's just crazy how guys can just up and leave. Even when you're getting close to season or through the spring, guys can just say, okay, I'm out, I'm done. Or you can bring a new guy in when you said, hey, this position may not be doing well. Oh, wait, let's go grab the NFL free agency of college football and bring in a couple guys and sign some. But, yeah, I think at the end of the day, again, it's going to be trenches, offense, defensive line, and then recruiting the right players. But you have to be aggressive in the NIL to do so. And that's going to be really important. And keeping the guys that you want around and building a strong foundation. But coaching-wise, check. I'm fully comfortable with this coaching staff. I think we have a national championship coaching staff. We've just got to get the pieces in place and be able to compete in the recruiting area.
Yeah, arena.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of the word for you.
Yeah, it's a bloodbath out there right now in recruiting.
Sure. Eddie said next year USC will run a base 3-4/2-4-5. How do you see this affecting the two deep?
Yeah, this is a great question too, and I've been doing a lot of D'Anton Lynn film study. Again, for this film stuff that we're going to do, I don't want to preview it too much, but Keely found a pretty cool app we're going to use going forward. We're going to get full video breakdown, but it's interesting because it seems like there's a lot more emphasis on the defensive ends for UCLA. And I'm just going back to our game. From watching that game again, there were times and it was passing situations, obvious passing situations, but even in some of the running situations where it was 4 defensive ends on there, right? It was Latu, it was Murphy, were outside on the outside, and then the interior stood up. Other players were number 4, who's Jones Jr., defensive end, and also Murphy's brother. The other Murphy on UCLA's roster was out. Those were the 4 linemen. So there were no interior defensive linemen, right? That's taking Bear Alexander off the field. That's taking from last year Keon Bars, Jack Sullivan, some of those bigger body types. Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that in the Big Ten. Some of those teams are going to more of a pass-heavy, air raid, if you will, offense. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to not only you're too deep, but who are players that can move around a lot? How can you have versatility? And Dan Lynn did an interview, and I forgot who it was with, but he was talking about, I don't call my defense based on this is what I do, this is my philosophy, that's it. I call it based on my players. I call it based on what my players do well, and I love that. That's what you want from a player's coach. But he also said, I'm going to find ways to put guys in successful positions, whether it's, like I said, it was a 4th and 2 for us, an obvious running situation, and there's only 1 interior defensive lineman and 3 DNs on the field in passing situations or in a running situation. And then we get down in the goal line area. Again, it was a 5-down front, and not 1 defensive lineman was on the field. It was all DNs and linebackers for the pass rush. And then they drop 8 and only bring 3, and they still get home. So it's going to change a lot. The funnest, is it fun? Can you say funnest?
No, it's not a
the
word.
most
It's
fun?
okay. The most fun.
The most fun for me in the future is going to be, as this develops in the spring and in the spring game and all that, of seeing how
what it looks like.
Yeah,
with
I can't
USC
wait
pieces.
to see what Lynn's going to do with guys that we thought maybe were interior playing outside now. Guys that are playing outside, they may, because there's times, like I said, there were times where Law 2 was in a head-up stance, or there was times when they had their DN Murphy, who's one of their best pass rushers on the outside, was in a 4-down stance, head up of Justin Dedich in the game, which is crazy. And that's why I've said funky looks before.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. And I'm going to show, as we go, obviously in the future, I'm going to show some of those when we do these defense and offensive breakdowns. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he changes a little bit. And obviously it's going to have to with the pieces that you have here, but it's going to be fun to see how he uses these guys and how he gets them to be successful.
We got a question from Manny who said, will there be another Trojan drafted in the first round with Caleb? You kind of touched on this already, Cody, but curious your thoughts.
The short answer for me is, I'll say it's possible, not probable. That's the best way for me to put it. It's possible, but it's not probable, right? I think Brendan Rice and Marshawn Lloyd are going to be the closest one. I think Brendan Rice will be a second-round pick, in my opinion, maybe third. I could see that. Marshawn Lloyd, these are going to be the guys that have a chance to really skyrocket their draft leading up, right? Because the biggest thing with Brendan Rice was consistency. That's what the coaching staff talked about. Was because you see flashes to where he can be a solid. I wouldn't put him in the wide receiver 1 yet in the NFL, but a solid wide receiver 2, a depth guy, a possession guy in the NFL who's a starter, who may be behind, a Justin Jefferson, or maybe behind some of these bigger name, an A.J. Brown, kind of that 1-2 punch, who works as, like we saw Jordan Addison this year, right?
Yeah.
Gets drafted to the same team as Justin Jefferson. Jefferson deals with some injuries, and now you see Jordan skyrocketing. I see Brendan Rice being that type of guy. Maybe not a first-round pick as high as Jordan, but getting drafted with a team that already has a star wide receiver, and then having to step up when he gets double-teamed the entire game, or when they want to focus on him, filling into that role. Now, will that be a first-round pick for him? I don't think so. That's highly unlikely, but who knows? And then Marshawn Lloyd's kind of the same story for me. Is can he skyrocket his draft stock enough to sneak into that first round throughout this process? I don't know. I'm biased. I think they both should be. Obviously, I think Taj Washington's a first-round pick, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's a lot of good players elsewhere, so I wouldn't say that outside of a USC podcast, but I can't wait to see these guys perform, like I said, these next couple of months, and I can't wait to see them in the NFL, too, and follow them on Pro Day. We're going to have a great Pro Day episode as well and see them perform. But yeah, I think it's if I was a betting man and I had to be, I would say Caleb Williams is going to be the only first-round player.
We got a question from Ron who said, well, on the sideline during a game, have you ever been hit by a player, a ball, or a close call? Well, I don't even know if you can answer this.
I've been hit on the field by a player.
Yes, that is true. We do know that,
You,
Cody.
though, I'm actually interested to hear this.
I don't want to jinx it. I don't think I have.
Okay.
Like, there have been, so my former boss, Ryan Abraham, always told me that the players are more skilled than I am, obviously, and they're anticipating me to stay where I am. So if I try and move, I know, and I've told you this, and you don't like it.
That's a recipe for disaster.
10 years
if you
in,
see someone coming in,
I'm so jinxing
you run
myself.
the heck out of the way
Well, yes,
and go backwards.
obviously,
even
but
if it's like 20 yards away and it's like this play might go to the sideline.
There's been
I am
times
running away.
where I'm like,
Yeah.
I have no room, and I just stand.
Yeah.
There's a screenshot, and I might just like overlay it right here, of the UCLA USC game from I think 2019 or something.
Yeah.
And Tyler Vaughns catches a pass and slides, and it's literally me like this, and he is sliding like I felt the wind.
That close?
It was very close. So I've had a lot of close calls, and probably some that I'm forgetting about.
Yeah. I've even when I'm on the sideline when our defense is out there, so I don't think I've never been hit or had a close call either. But
no,
I've seen players and I've seen people go down though, and it's It's pretty frightening.
It's
Refs,
scary, especially when like
camera people holding the cameras. You see all the
everyone's
time.
padded and you're just like plebeian status.
Yeah.
You know.
And then you don't want to hurt the player too. So you're like,
I know.
I'm putting myself at risk here, but I've got to try to get out of the way.
Sacrifice for Caleb Williams to still be healthy.
Yeah. Take one for the team.
Seriously.
But yeah, that's.
Sorry.
You might have just jinxed yourself though. So hopefully next year.
I kept knocking.
You said 10 years never happened, but we'll see.
Well, because you doubted my wisdom.
But just you hear me now, future Keely. If someone is coming your way,
if it ain't broke, why fix it?
Yeah, and Ryan, if that's his advice, great. But I'm telling you right now, if someone run the other way.
I know the scenario. Like if I can run, I will run. But if
serpentine,
it's too
just
quick,
serpentine.
it's not a gun.
No.
We got a question from Kevin wanting to know our Super Bowl thoughts. 49ers or Chiefs, he asks.
Yeah, I was wrong in my Super Bowl prediction. I said Ravens and.
Did you say Lions?
I said Ravens and Niners.
Okay.
I did say Niners, but I said I know Jared and Amon-Ra, so it'd be cool to see them.
Yeah.
Also, shout out Amon-Ra, who was first team All-Pro. Also was an alternative in the Pro Bowl. I don't know how you get first team All-Pro, which is higher than Pro Bowl, and then become an alternative. Now that's all voting and all that. But anyways, huge season for him. Lions played well. That was a great game to watch. So
great to see him succeed.
Awesome to see Amon-Ra. Nelson as well, Aguilar.
Yes.
Great to see him play as well in that AFC Championship game. But yeah, I'm gonna go. Want to do score prediction? No, you don't want to do. You hate score prediction.
I hate score prediction for the team we cover.
I'll do it though because I like doing these, and then this will be on record, so I can go back and look. I'm gonna go. It's so tough because right now, call it what it is. Right, everyone's hating on the Chiefs. Right, it's almost turning into the Patriots.
Bama.
It's Bama Patriots team that's constantly year in and year out. I think this is 3 or 4 of the last 5 years they're in the Super Bowl again. Right, and it's Mahomes, Kelsey, those same type of players, and people thought they were done, right?
Yeah.
They got rid of Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
Some of their bigger name players got rid of them, and they were on their way out, and they thought, hey, this team's done. Spagnuolo, the defense coordinator, has done an amazing job. Their defense is really, in my opinion, playing better than their offense right now, and they're doing a great job of getting that spark, and like we said before, defense wins championships, right? And again, they have the best quarterback in football right now, and he's doing a great job of leading that team, but or one of. You can make an argument for Lamar and Josh Allen. Some of those guys are playing well. Brock Purdy playing well too. But I'm over here doing my NFL. I'm in the NFL radio mode when I do the radio shows. But yeah, I say all this to say people don't want the Chiefs to win, right?
I think so. I think that's the common consensus.
If you look at Twitter and Instagram, I'm
also
not saying
TikTok,
anything.
it's a meme.
Yeah, TikTok as well. And everyone's saying like the Travis Kelce, the Taylor Swift, all that. We're not saying anything people don't know. I know you love Taylor too, so
I do. But
I don't really care. Like whatever. Like it's all entertainment business. I get it, but
I think people are overreacting. People overreact all the time.
Yeah, but it's no. I get what you're saying. I don't
guess
care.
What I'm saying is she's not requesting the camera to be put on.
No, that's true, and that's true. I get that.
And these networks know that it's a cash cow.
Exactly what I said. That's what I'm saying. It's entertainment. Like you have to understand. But guess what? Any publicity, or I guess, is that what they say, right? Or all publicity is good publicity. Yeah. So people getting on the comments saying, get her off, take that off. Like, it's still building that network. People are still tuning in. And
yeah.
But either way, I'm getting off track here. This is a great question. I know we're talking about it. But I'm going to go 49ers. I'm going to say, I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as people think.
Okay.
2 good defenses. I'm going to say it's going to be, 28-24 49ers.
Interesting.
I think it's going to be 21-24, and then the Niners are going to have a game-winning drive, and Chris McCaffrey's going to score, and it's going to be 28-24, and the game ends.
Okay.
That's my prediction.
You heard it here. We haven't this question made me realize that I try to not pay attention to the actual, mechanics of the NFL. I just want to watch mindlessly. Yeah. I can't give any analysis because
last week we were talking about
work.
Did I sign an NDA and all that
yes.
Just on record now.
Oh my goodness.
Everyone, I talked to this about my wife. It's with my wife too because she was starting to buy into it. The color thing is now broken. Obviously,
that's true. We talked about it last week.
Everyone's saying the Super Bowl colors are going to be who's in the Super Bowl because it's scripted. Can't say that anymore. But yeah, it's. If I'm a betting man though, I would be scared to put my money against the Chiefs just because of how dominant they've been, and they're like the new Patriots and the
and they've been there before. Yeah, they know how to do it.
They know how to win.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my prediction. I'm going 28-24 49ers.
Okay.
And I'm sticking to it. But what do you think? If you don't have to do a score, but you got to pick a winner on record as well.
I do.
I already know who you're going to pick.
Who am I going to pick?
You're a Swiftie though, aren't you? You're not going to go with the Chiefs?
No,
Okay.
that doesn't. All respect to the Swifties, but that's not
All
where.
respect, yeah. Be careful. They'll
Come after me.
you. Yeah.
No, I don't know. This is what I'm saying. This is why I preface by saying I don't actually have my football brain on when I watch. I'm just
Gotcha.
like, I'm being a normal person.
I'm not saying
watching
who
this.
you want to. Who do you? I mean, I guess who do you want to? Or who do you think / want?
The problem is I don't really care. I cared about the Lions and I cared about the Ravens.
See, yeah.
So like,
Because it was you wanted that kind of Cinderella story. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. I think everybody, I could say as a collective, probably everybody would love to see Lamar win his first one,
Yeah.
or see the Lions
yeah.
get to and then win a Super Bowl as well. But hey, the better teams won, in my opinion. They're two very good football teams. Is the Chiefs got hot at the right time, and the 49ers have an all-star superstar roster, and their quarterback's playing very well. So
Did you see Brendan Ayuk talk about the butterfly on his shoe?
yeah, no, it was a ladybug.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So he said, yeah, so for context, that was hilarious too. Paige and I were watching it, just cracking up.
Yeah.
And then she got a TikTok, like literally 30 minutes later, someone made it. And it was like the Detroit Lions thinking they had a chance. And it was like a picture of Ayuk. And then you slide it and it said, but this
Yeah.
waiting around. It was a picture of a ladybug. But
Yeah.
so he said before the game, they said, did you know you're going to have that? Aaron Andrews asked if he's going to have that miraculous catch or the off the face mask, which was unbelievable. Like that.
Unreal.
That has to be perfect for that to happen. That doesn't happen. Like a tip ball, sure, but off a face mask while you're still full stride, falling down perfectly to you. And his response was, yeah, a ladybug landed on my shoe pregame, so I knew something like that was going to happen. And then
Crazy.
that blew up as a meme.
Also, shouts to the Pack. He was a ASU Sun Devil.
Yeah.
He was good.
Also, well, so McCaffrey was Stanford, and
Yes. I know.
so we got there's some good Pac-12 players.
But that's a more obscure
Yeah.
reference, I feel like.
But you're avoiding right now. Also,
I am. Yes, I'm very good at
you're
this.
very good at this. Just give me who
Chiefs.
I say.
Chiefs.
Okay,
There
cool.
you
That
go.
way we have a little. Okay, if I
You
win
said
or you win.
49ers?
I said 49ers,
Okay.
28-24.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
This is usually how it works. You have some detailed logic reason. I come in and say something stupid,
Yeah.
and then I'm right.
Yeah, then you win.
Yeah, then
then
I
you
win.
all the predictions.
Yeah, so it's perfect.
You got one perfect this year too. Remember?
I know.
What game was that? Do you
Second season in a row. I don't know,
remember?
but it was
'cause
weird.
You got Rice the year before.
Mhm.
Anyways,
Crazy.
Moving on.
G said, "What podcast do you listen to during the season? Which do you listen to during the off season?" Now, behind the scenes, I guess I try not to listen to any other USC podcasts, especially during the season, just because it's so easy.
Competition.
No.
Competition. No, I'm just
No,
kidding.
it's so easy to like. Everyone comes up with such great points or has
Yeah.
such great angles that they think from, and it's hard not to hear that and then accidentally regurgitate it when you're talking for what ends up being 3 hours with us. So
Yeah,
I just to try and stay original to my thoughts, I try to block that out. So
Good, and I like that little competition plug there. Yeah. Just
no,
all the USC information's here. No, I'm just kidding. But I don't.
you're not a podcast
I don't
person.
listen to any. I've never downloaded or really subscribed to or constantly listened. I've never listened to a podcast from start to finish that I can think of, even ours.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll go back and watch parts, but you know me, like I don't.
You don't. Yeah.
I'm the worst when it comes to watching myself back. And I've talked to great broadcasters, Yogi Roth, some people in the business are like, dude, go watch yourself. You got to learn from it. Now I'll
Yeah.
go back and watch clips here and there and learn from them, but I hate listening to myself talk. It's just it's weird to me. But yeah.
I would say Raina Troy in the off season. They're my friends, so that makes sense. And then sometimes I do like there's a lot of like broadcasting info podcasts, like having other broadcasters on as it like Richard Deitch has a good podcast about that, stuff
Okay.
like that. But like I'm kind of more into audiobooks right now, which is weird
There you go.
because that doesn't seem like me. But I'm pro music first. I don't know. There's just so
Same.
much. I have to edit this podcast. There's so much talking in my ears that
What's your Beyonce? I'm guessing. I already know this. What am I
yeah,
asking?
no, you're gonna actually hate this answer, but I like everything but country. Have you seen TikToks where it's like what non-country fans think that country sounds like,
Yeah.
and it's just like my
Yeah.
dog, and like,
Well, I
that's
saw
what it
I saw
sounds
a
like to me.
TikTok recently too, talking about, and I know I'm forgetting some of the artists, so I apologize. But if you've got some great country artists, put them in there. I love listening to some of these newer guys. But someone said like, how do I explain to people I don't like country when it's like a hay barrel and a horse, but I like country and it's like a mountain and a sunset, like the type of. Get what I'm saying?
Yes. Well, okay. I like Morgan Wallen. Who's the guy who does Tennessee whiskey?
Chris Stapleton.
I like Chris
See,
Stapleton.
I say mainstream. I like a lot of those guys too. They have really good songs. Tyler Childress is another one. Amazing voice, amazing singer, really good, like that rasp type voice.
Okay.
But sometimes you get a little carried away with like they can sound repetitive, right? The country song
Yes,
is like,
I think,
I got my truck and my girlfriend and my beer, and my,
Yeah,
and it's like,
yeah.
all right, we've heard that one a bunch. And
Yeah.
some of the country songs are going a little more pop. I like that folk, a little banjo maybe type of country right now,
Wow,
like
okay.
relaxed vibe.
Okay.
Maybe I'll put out a playlist for you, or put together a Spotify playlist.
Meanwhile, G's like, I didn't even ask about music. Why are you guys talking about
what
this?
are we talking about? Anyways, no, it was podcast, music, kind of the same.
Yeah, but wasn't, yeah.
We might cut all this, but anyways, moving on.
Final question comes from Louie, who said, when are we getting a Dory Jackson on the podcast?
That was one of your requests.
It was, yes.
We were coming up with lists of people to interview this offseason. Linert's on there.
We're trying.
Yeah, Keely requested.
You don't have to tell them.
No,
I want to get them in the studio before we.
I won't say all of them, but Dory was
what
one.
If we don't get them? You never know.
We will. Yeah. Well, if we don't get them, then I'll come knock on their door and get them. Now, the only way we don't get them is if they're not in the area or they can't make it schedule wise.
Sure.
But Leinert already committed.
Yes.
Basically in writing on video. I don't think either of those, but in person.
Yes.
And then yeah, I mean the other guys that I've played with before, I will talk to them. But Dory was one you mentioned. I'm on board with that. I think Dory would be a lot of fun to talk. He's commented on my questions before too on the show.
I know.
He asked a question. I think I want to say the Washington game, talking about like how can our run game get going, or something about the offense or something.
Loved it.
But it was after the podcast recorded, so I just messaged him. But I was like, dang it, man, we missed that one. But yeah, Dory would be a really good one to get on, and some other great players that have been recent USC history. Yeah,
it's funny because you really see the Trojan family, because you're like, list people your dream wish list, and I listed people, and you're like, oh yeah, I know all those people. That's fine.
Yeah,
you were like, it's so nonchalant.
Yeah. Well, I played with them, most of them.
Well, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, so I've known them for a while, but it's cool too. That's the tradition and the legacy behind USC is like winning a game, winning a big game. When we beat Notre Dame or beating UCLA to win the Pac-12 South, or my first win against Boston College, getting texts from Barkley and Carson Palmer and Leinert at the time for me was like starstruck type stuff. Like, oh my gosh, and talking to Paul McDonald and Rodney Peete, just the greats from way back in the day. Pat Hayden was the AD at the time. Like, and I played quarterback, so I'm speaking specifically for that position group. Yeah. But all the greats that played before me, it was so cool to have them reach out and talk to you and be a part of that, and just be able to interact with them. Saw John David over the offseason, John David Booty.
Wow.
Me and Mark Sanchez trained together for a while. We got really close. So he's the one that got me into doing broadcasting. But yeah, it's such a cool thing. Even though I know them and play with them, I'm kind of like you sometimes, like, yeah, it's Matt Leinert, man. That's Mark Sanchez. That's, guys that I grew up watching that I got to follow in their footsteps and hopefully leave an imprint as I did at USC as well. So it's a cool thing. But yeah, I would love to get some of those guys in here and do some interviews. Now we have cameras too.
Yeah.
When we did the Barkley episode, it was all
just
audio.
Us in here with no cameras. Yeah. It'll be cool. So long story short, Louie, we're trying. That's the answer.
Yeah. For us saying, what are we at time-wise?
We're at 1:37 on the recording.
That's not bad.
Not bad.
But for us saying like, yeah, this will be a shorter episode.
You were scared we wouldn't have enough to talk about, and I was like, we talk too much, Cody.
No, I talk too much.
It's a joint effort.
Well, I'll say this: it's a podcast. We're talking.
Yes,
right? That's the whole point.
Yes,
we're talking.
It is.
With that being said, though, I feel like is that the last question?
That is. We are wrapping it up.
I'm wrapping it up. Tierney's got to get going. We've got to get going. It's rainy in LA right now. The next couple of days will be stay safe out there. Yeah, be careful. While I was driving down, a lot of traffic, couple accidents, but either way, support the Trojans on these bowl games coming up. The Senior Bowl, hopefully tonight you watch, and then Senior Bowl February 3rd. Stay tuned. Next week is going to be a great episode for all the transfer guys.
Yeah, fun episode coming up.
And then we're going to do some film breakdown of that as well. Woo. Officially confirming that.
Exciting.
So we'll be able to add that in. But with that being said, love you guys. Fight on. You can't get mad at us because this is 2 weeks in a row now. We're being consistent, and I'll see you guys next week.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up like the man said. Like we previewed all episode, we'll have a really fun signing day episode next week, so make sure you tune in for that. That's going to wrap it up. That's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.